Let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable: the anger of God. That phrase can sound harsh, maybe even a little scary. But what if I told you it's not a problem we need to explain away? What if it's actually good news? Okay, first things first, let's get one thing straight. When we talk about God's anger, we are not talking about human rage. The selfish, impulsive, destructive stuff. No, divine anger is something else entirely. It's righteous, it's perfectly just, and its goal is to purify. They're worlds apart. So why do we squirm when we hear this idea? Well, in our culture, we tend to prefer a softer, gentler version of God. The idea of divine anger feels a bit too intense, a little too old-fashioned, maybe. We want the comfort without the confrontation. And what's the result of that? We end up sanitizing God. We try to round off his sharp edges to make him fit our preferences. We essentially try to neuter the Lion of Judah, and in doing so, we strip away one of his most crucial attributes: his fierce, holy, and perfect opposition to evil. So what does this holy fury actually look like then? It isn't some out-of-control emotion. It's the natural and necessary reaction of perfect goodness when it confronts evil. Think about it. You'd want a good judge to hate injustice, right? Well, a truly good God must hate the things that destroy and corrupt his beloved creation. So here it is, the key definition. Divine wrath is a measured, just, and righteous opposition to all evil. It's not a cosmic temper tantrum. It's a perfect, holy reaction against everything that harms what he loves. You could even say it's his love in action against evil. And listen, this isn't some new concept. This dynamic has been there from page 1. Go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. What do you see? You see justice and mercy, hand in hand. Expulsion from the garden was the act of justice, sure, but it was immediately followed by an act of mercy, God himself providing a covering for their shame. This shows us what wrath is really for. It's not the end of the story. It's the warning signal. It's like a plow that has to break up hard, barren ground. It's a violent act, but it's necessary so that something new and beautiful can be planted. Wrath prepares the way for mercy. And you see this pattern, this rhythm, all through the Old Testament. There's judgment, but then there's deliverance. There's fire, but a remnant is saved. There's wrath, and then there's rescue. The two are completely inseparable. One creates the desperate need for the other. And this all connects directly to Jesus. Think about that scene where he cleanses the temple, flipping tables, driving people out. That wasn't Jesus losing his temper. That was holy fire. It was a passionate, purifying love, clearing out the corruption that had infested his Father's house. And all of this, the justice, the mercy, the warnings, the purification, it all leads to one single monumental event, the ultimate collision point. We're talking about the cross. This is the one place in all of human history where God's perfect justice against sin and his limitless love for us meet head-on. This ancient prophecy from Isaiah is just staggering. It says, "It pleased the Lord to crush him." Why? Because God's justice is not something he can just ignore or sweep under the rug. It had to be satisfied. And so the full, concentrated force of his righteous anger against all of our sin was poured out onto his own Son. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus looked this reality square in the face. He knew what the cup represented. He asked the Father if there was any other way for the plan to be fulfilled, confirming that this path was the only path. And then, out of love, he willingly took that cup and drank it down to the very last drop, so we would never have to. Now, believe it or not, this message about God's justice used to be heard very differently. There was a time when it wasn't a barrier to faith, it was the very spark that ignited it. Let's jump back in time to a powerful example. The year is 1741. America is in the middle of a massive spiritual awakening. And in a small church in Enfield, Connecticut, a pastor named Jonathan Edwards gets up to speak. He's about to deliver a sermon that will go down in history. The sermon's title was "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," and the effect was electric. It didn't push people away, it sparked a fire of revival. Why? Because the people listening didn't hear an abusive tyrant. They heard about a holy, just God, and they took his justice seriously, and made them realize their need for mercy, and they ran to it. So what changed?
Why do we hear that same message and often have a completely different reaction? Well, there's been a huge cultural shift, a great disconnect in how we even think about these ideas.
Just look at this breakdown. Back then, justice was widely seen as an absolute, unbending standard. Today, for many, it's a relative concept. Wrath was understood to be the necessary consequence of violating justice. Now, it's often labeled an abusive trait. And hell has gone from being understood as a real destination to, for many, just an outdated, scary story. This changes everything about how the message is received. So, let's bring this all home. Far from being a problem to hide, the biblical concept of God's wrath is absolutely essential. It's the black velvet background that makes the diamond of God's grace shine so brilliantly. It's what gives concepts like mercy and salvation their profound meaning. The logic of grace is actually pretty straightforward. It works like this. For God to be truly good, he must hate evil. Number 2, this perfect hatred is expressed as righteous wrath. 3, that wrath establishes our desperate need for a rescue. And that leads to 4, because our need is so great, the rescue itself, which we call grace, is absolutely breathtakingly glorious. And this is the ultimate takeaway. Think about it. If you remove the reality of God's wrath, what is there to be saved from? Without justice, the idea of grace is just a nice, fluffy sentiment. It has no power. It's the severity of the diagnosis that makes the cure so miraculous. And that's the final question I want to leave you with. If God is not a God of perfect justice, a justice that absolutely must be satisfied, then what exactly is the good news of the gospel all about? What really are we being saved from?